Welcome to episode 2 of this tutorial series titled Livewire 3 from scratch. My name is William Juma. In this episode, I'm going to teach you about Livewire 3 components. Components are building blocks of the Livewire application. Components can be reusable in creating dynamic front-end UI or user interface. In the previous tutorial episode, we looked at a simple counter app whereby we created a component. This tutorial episode will build up on the knowledge that you have acquired thus far. There are two ways in which we can be able to create Livewire components. The first way, of course, is creating the files manually. So we will go and create our Livewire class inside app Livewire, and then our blade file, or in this case our view, inside resources views Livewire. If the name of the Livewire class is, for example, create user, let me just type in here. So if the name is create user, then your blade file should be in kebab case. So in this case, it should be create -user. Otherwise, you will have an error. Of course, the other method of creating components is just the method that we did use in our previous tutorial episode, where you can just run the command in terminal. So if we want to create a component called create user, we can do php artisan make livewire, and then the name of our component, create user, like that. If we want it in a directory, then the name of the directory will precede the name of our file. So in this case, we can have the directory name here before create user. I'm going to click enter to create our two files. And in this case, of course, just to repeat and remind you what we did in our previous tutorial, when you see inside app Livewire, now we have another file that is called create user. And this is a Livewire class which extends component. And then of course we have the render method, which we said you can also just delete it and do away with it. It's not a must for you to have it. But sometimes if now you're passing some data through the render view, then probably you will remain with it. Obviously, we also have the create user blade file. I also want us to talk about inline components. Instead of having two separate files, the way we have had for these components, even in a similar way in which we had in our previous tutorial, it is possible for you to create components that are inline. If we want to create an inline component, then we can be able to create it also manually, or we can create it using an artisan command. So we can do php artisan make livewire, and then maybe here we can say show user, and then of course we can tag -inline, just like that. And then this command is going to create for us an inline component. And when an inline component is created, it is just one file. As you can see, we do not have in our components Livewire, we do not have, in views Livewire, we do not have anything called show users. But when we go in our app Livewire, then now you can see we have show user. Now let us open it and see how it looks like. As you can see, what we are having here, inside the render method, we are showing our HTML code. So in this case, whatever it is that was supposed to be in our component, in our Livewire view, we are just showing it here directly. So that's the difference between the other component and this component that we are calling an inline component. Now, I want us to go ahead and talk about Livewire stubs. Laravel stubs are helper modules that enables us to customize default artisan-generated classes. In order to customize Livewire 3 stubs, we can generate the stubs using a command, and I would like us to just go ahead and do that. So I would like to open terminal, new terminal, and I would like to run the command that is going to create for us our stubs. And the command for creating stubs is php artisan component php artisan livewire, and then :: stubs. That way, when I click enter, the stubs will be created. But I want us to see exactly what they look like. Now, when we open this file, as you can see in between, as you check the directory, we have app bootstrap config, database, node modules, public, resources, storage, and stubs. These node modules will be installed if you run npm install. But then we have a file called stubs between storage and tests. When we open this file, the folder, sorry. When we open the folder, as you can see, we have 5 stub files, which include Livewire inline stub. This is the first one. And when we look at it, you will find it has something similar. Because it's called inline, it has something very similar to what we're having here. This is the stub file for generating inline components. So you can see this is how it looks like. Inside here we are namespacing, so either within the Livewire directory or maybe Livewire and then another directory inside it, a subdirectory. And then of course we are having the class. So in this case, if you call it create user, then the class will be injected here. And then of course your HTML. Then we have Livewire paste stub. And this file is used for generating test files for paste. And paste is a testing framework for Laravel that has been developed by Nuno Maduro. And then we can check the third one. And in this one here, we are having the normal Livewire stub, so not the inline one, the one that creates for us our component, our class, and then we have the name of the class, we have the namespace, and then we have the view being rendered. And I believe it is similar to what we are having here in this previous thing that we worked with in the Capita app. And then of course, after that we have Livewire test.stub, and these generates test files for testing using PHP unit. And then finally, we have Livewire view.stub. And this one is the one that is generating our views. So as you can see, inside the views, we are having, when we go to resources, views, and then we go to this one here, maybe create user, you can see what we have. So in this tab, we actually have the view, and then inside here, it will be passing different quotes. You can be able to modify these stubs to your liking. And once you modify them, when you run the command, php artisan make livewire, and then the name of the component you want to create, the changes that you'd have made in these tabs will be taken. And I would like to give an example. In our Livewire view.stubs, I want to add something here. I want to add a H1 tag like that. And inside here I can put some text. This is my awesome title like that. When I save, if I now go and create another component, so let me say PHP artisan Livewire, PHP artisan make Livewire, and then we call it test. I want you to be very careful and check what we will have in our view here, in our views folder. I do not know if it has already created it. You can see there's a little bit of a lag. I can pause a bit. And now we have test.blade. And when you look at it inside now, whatever markup that we added is also being added. Of course, I have a typo. Now, that is all that I wanted to talk about stubs. Obviously, you can also be able to modify the other stubs to your liking. I want us to talk about rendering components. In our previous tutorial, we learned how to render full page components, whereby we created a routes in routes folder in a file called web.php. And then we used the class. And I would just like to go and show you what we did, just as a reminder. For us to be able to render a view called counter, we were having the route, and then we were having the class. It is also possible for you to pass parameters. For example, if you're using root model binding, you can be able to say, here you're passing counter, like that. So in this case, you can be able to pass in the ID from the view, and then once it's passed here, you can be able to access the counter using root model binding. I can be able to remove that, but I believe this one was well illustrated in our previous tutorial. The other way in which we can be able to render, we can include it in a blade file or in another component. And for us to be able to do that, I would like to demonstrate, because we have create user.blade, this blade file that you're having here. Of course, it doesn't have markup, but I would want us to include it in this component that we created that we called counter. So I would like to, after we have the counter, maybe I can have another div and we have another card. So here I can have div, or maybe let us go ahead and just have the div inside here. So maybe we can say div class, div with a class of card, and then we can have an offset in a similar way that we did for the other, offset 3, column 6, like that. And then let us just have the card body. So another div, and we are going to call it, we are going to give it a class of card body. So class card body, like that. Inside that we can write showing the create user component, like that. And now we can be able to render this component inside our counter.plate. And how we can do that? We can just do it this way: Livewire, full colon, a single colon, and then the name of our component. So in this case, it's called create hyphen user. Actually, we have it here. We have it where do we have it? We actually have it here. Create, not here, not there. Create user.plate. Yes, we have it here. Create user. And then of course we can close that tag. So once we do this, let me attempt and see if it is possible for us to be able to show this component. So let us go to Chrome and run our application and see. So localhost 8000. Then obviously we are running localhost 8000 and we are running counter. I know I might have a challenge. I must be able to run XAMPP for me to be able to show whatever it is that we have there. So I ensure that my SQL is running. So when I click here, of course, now we have a component here that is called showing create user. To be able to style it a little bit such that it looks different, I need to create another component here. Another root component. So I will create another div that now will encapsulate both of them. Then I can be able to move this one outside. So let me cut it and then move it here, and then have the closing div such that it will not display inside the other components sort of. So now when you look at it, we are now displaying two components within the same page. I want us to go ahead and look at how we can be able to set properties in our component. Of course, we did look at it sometime yesterday, but I still want to do sort of a refresher. So let us go to our create user component, and then we are going to create a property. So we can be able to have public property, and in this case the name of our property, let us call it name. And I want to give it a value, so we can say awesome name, like that. Now you close this like that, and then we can be able to access this inside our create user component, or in other words view. So when I open this, instead of us returning that, maybe I can have a paragraph tag and be able to show this property here. So we can just use the mustache, double curly braces, and then here we can pass in name like that. Basically, if we are to refresh, then you can see awesome name. It is also possible to pass the property, to pass information to the view in different ways. I would like us to go back to our Livewire class create user. We can be able to pass data to our view using with We can be able to do it like this and have an array of values, and we can say email, and then we can set maybe our email juma@j.com, something of that sort. Now if I come to our view, in this case our create user view, and then I can just copy this and then paste this one here, and now change, instead of having name, I will have now this second one being email. If I refresh in our application, now we are also having the email displayed. It is still possible for us to instead of using with, to just pass the data as an array, usually in the way we do it in the Laravel way, sort of. So let me remove this. I can be able to put a comma here and put the square brackets and still write email, and then we can say our email is juma@j.com, like that. This will still serve the same purpose. Of course, I have to close this using the semicolon. When I refresh, again you can see nothing is really changing, meaning it is displaying in a similar way. And as you can see, it still works. I want us to talk about the wire key attribute. The wire key attribute should be added whenever we loop through an array. This is because without it, Livewire will not be able to track the position of items in a loop. This may produce undesirable consequences in your code. I would like to demonstrate this by seeding users in our database and connecting our application to the database. In our previous tutorial, we had connected our app and run MySQL, which I have still been able to do today. I want us to go ahead and seed users in our database. The reason why I decided to work with users is because already there are files that have been created for us. We have the user factory, and we have the user migration, and of course we have the database seeder, whereby the first line that we have is a line showing us how to seed 10 users to our database. So I can just go ahead and uncomment, and then I'm going to run the command php artisan db for database seed, like that, and this will create for us 10 users. We are having an issue. Because it seems as if our default is Laravel. So in this case, probably I can be able to run php artisan migrate fresh, since the database that we are using is just called Laravel. We are having a challenge. Let me just change the name of the database here. I think that would be the easiest. So we are going to change the database to something else. Instead of calling it Laravel, let me call it Livewire 3 from scratch, like that. Now you save it, and then you attempt to run it again. Now I'm going to do php artisan migrate, and now it's creating for us our database table, and then we can be able to run our migrations. So then after that, I will run php artisan db seed. In this, you seed 10 users to our database. So let us see how we can be able to return these users and show them in our component. I will open create user class, not the blade file, so create user component. And if we want to return these users, we can be able to use the mount method. So in this case, we can say public mount, public function mount, and in this one we are going to now set a property called users. So we can say public users, and then here we can be able to load all users from the database to this property that we have here. And if we want to reference this property, we are going to use this users like that, and I can say we can populate it with users all, and in Laravel this we actually get for us all our users. Obviously I have not been able to create to import the model, so we can import the model, use app models user like that. Now if we have it like that, then we can be able to load the users in our view, and that is exactly what I would like to do. And so under this, I'm going to just move one line, and I want to have a loop. So for us to be able to loop, we just loop the usual Laravel way. So we can say for each users as user, and then inside here, let me remove one of these ads. Inside here we can have a div, probably a div or something else, it doesn't really matter. I'm having an issue. Yes, let me delete this. We have a div, and close it. And now as we will be looping through our users, then here is where we are going to have our wire key. So wire key, and in this case we will just use whatever it is that is our sort of like our ID, the ID of the users. So in this case we can say user ID like that. And then after that, now we can be able to display our users, and in this case I just want to display the name only, so I'm going to put a paragraph tag and just display the user name. In a similar fashion, we will just use the mouse touch like that, and then we can say user name. And the reason why I'm doing it like this is because our database actually has a column called name, so basically it will return something for us. So when I refresh, now you can see we are having some users that are being displayed here. And because we have used wire key, now that Livewire will be able to easily track if we make changes to any specific value in our sort of like columns or rows, then it can be able to identify what it is that we are working with easily. It is also possible for us to populate these users now without the mount method. Let me just go and do an edit. It is possible for us to populate the users without using the mount method. And I know obviously while working with it, you might also come up with another method. So instead of using the mount method, I I want to comment it out. Like that. I will also comment out public users, this property. It is also possible for us to access the users by passing the values through here. And what we are going to do, we are going to just say, so I can put a comma here in a similar way in which we were doing it here. And so after we have declared the email, I also want to pass in the users. So in this case, we can say users, because in our view, we are referencing a variable called users. And then we just say user all, like that. This one will also, I need to remove the semicolon. This one will also still work. So let me save and then refresh. So still, as you can see, is nothing that is happening, meaning the users are still being displayed. I want us to talk about binding inputs to properties. Of course, some of these things that I'm talking about in this episode, we will still revisit most of them when we will be dealing with particular things, for example, forms. But let me just talk about binding inputs to properties. I want to have an input, and this one I'm going to put it in our form, in our component, create user. Before we begin looping the user, so inside here you can have input, maybe type text, and then we can say wire model. And wire model, we can set it similar to a property that we are having there. So let us set it as name, like that. And basically, this input here is now able to communicate, or in other words, it's bound to our properties. So we can be able to delete name and write something else. And if we have a submit button here, we can be able to submit. And as you can see, our name, as I'm typing, there's nothing that is happening to it. If you would like to have this one being reactive and change as you type in, you can be able to say wire model dot live, like that. Once you have it like that, if I type here that I need to refresh, yes, if I type here, if I delete, you can see it's being deleted also on the other side. If I type that my name is William, as you can see, we are having it being visible right away as we type. This is lovely. As I conclude, in our previous tutorial, we mentioned a bit about layouts. I will be talking more about it in our next tutorial. This is the end of this tutorial episode. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. By doing this, you'll be notified when I upload another awesome video. If you like the video, you can give it a thumbs up and share. You are welcome to engage in the comment section. Thank you.